Chapter 4, Clues, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 30.31 inches, steady. Of course, with my lengthening string of wonderful luck, I didn't run into Candy and Dot on the path. But there was evidence they'd come that way not long before me, still wet clumps of waterlogged dust where they'd crawled out from the lake. These clues vanished after a few feet, the trail returning to its hard-packed soil. Putting on a burst of speed, I shot out from the trees' cooler shadows into stark sunlight. Still 100 paces off sat Loon Lake Lodge. Its tin roof shimmered with heat haze. I ran even faster. Chapter 5, The Gauntlet, 101 degrees Fahrenheit, 29.99 inches, slowly falling. When I barged inside not long later, a group of teenage boys, those I knew from the park and offspring of the weekly cabin guests, were hanging out on the screened entryway that doubled as a video arcade. Pushing past them while the sounds of Breakout and Night Rider fought against the jukebox speakers' piped-in offerings, I endured catcalls and a grabbing paw or two from those degenerates who believed they had a right to a free grope because I lived in the same squalor as they did. I thought I was in the clear when Mickey Strykowski, king turd of the trailer trash delinquents, stepped in front of me. "Well, looky here, boys," Mick said. "If it ain't Miss Prim and Proper." I tried to sidestep him, but he blocked me again. "Get out of my way, Mick. Me oh my, our princess's panties in a bunch. What's wrong, Lillian? Your Aunt Flo come to visit early?" I thought Todd smelled bad. Mick smelled like he washed with rotten garlic cloves instead of soap. He wore a ratty t-shirt that said, "I don't get mad, I get even." Gulping from a bottle of Dr. Pepper, he leaned forward and belched directly into my face. Loud laughter erupted while I tried not to puke. At the same time, Watermagic reacted. Instantly, soda pop sprayed from the bottle and all over Mick, as if he'd stuck a thumb over the hole and shaken the bottle before he let the fizz fly. Mick spluttered and cussed, but didn't think to drop the pop. It all happened so fast, yet I could have stopped it, maybe, but I hadn't. Mick was he deserved what he got. If anything, it probably washed off some of his stench. With the soda all used up, I smiled at him as if he was a lost puppy, while I poked a fingertip into the middle of his soaked chest. "Looks like your Aunt Flo arrived, Mick." When I applied pressure, he backed off as if I'd given him a 1,000-volt zap from a cattle prod. I sauntered past him and the gasping hordes of hormones. My knees felt as if I'd ripped the scabs from them, which, when I glanced down, I saw that's precisely what had happened. Itchy blood dribbled down my shins. Watermagic's tithe for her continued good graces. But as before with Mrs. Carmichael's cigarette, it felt good to use Watermagic to let off steam. I felt invigorated, powerful. "Better watch out, boys. Don't make me mad." Behind my back, Mitch muttered, "Bitch." Chapter 6, Lounge, 102 degrees Fahrenheit, 29.98 inches, slowly falling. Flying into the lounge a few seconds later, the jukebox's blare even louder, the smell of cigarette smoke mingling with the deep fryer's offerings from the kitchen, I spotted the twins at the bar, their backs to me. Perched side by side, Candy and Dot drank blue soda pop from frosted bottles. Much too short for the stools, their legs dangled off into the shadowed space below the bar. Their feet, always moving, occasionally touched toes as if to make sure the other was near. They didn't want to turn at my entrance, but set their bottles down at the same time. "Sorry, Lily," Candy offered. I could tell it was Candy because of the pale, jelly bean-shaped birthmark on the back of her neck near her exposed right shoulder. Dot burped before she swiveled on the stool. First grinning sheepishly, she added, "We didn't mean to." "What didn't you mean to?" I stomped the remaining distance to them. "Run off and scare me silly? You're lucky I don't swat both your bottoms bloody. You had me worried sick. You could have fallen into a sinkhole, got gobbled up by quicksand, drowned, or wandered off lost into the middle of nowhere. There's bears and timber rattlers and cougars and wolves and who knows what else is creeping out there just looking for a double helping of little girl for lunch. Porcupines! The porcupines could have gotten you." While I yelled, the blood pumped into my head badly enough it felt as if my skull might burst. The twins, meanwhile, edged closer to one another. By the time I blurted "porcupines," their arms were so intertwined, their faces pressed cheek to cheek, they looked like Siamese twins. Suddenly my rage was doused, a roaring campfire smothered by a surprise downpour. I gathered them up into a triple sister hug. "Oh, my sweet babies, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I promise I won't ever get angry again." Somehow I was channeling Mama, repeating words I'd heard from her own lips more than once. I felt terrible. I hated myself. Dot and Candy meant the world to me. I would do anything to protect them. Damn my anger. Damn Watermagic. Yet, just as with the countless times Mama made false promises to me, I knew I wouldn't keep my word. Watermagic, a constant presence, elemental in its magic and buried deep within my cells, was as much a part of me as my beating heart or my lungs. I might hold my breath for a while, but eventually I had to breathe. The twins, meanwhile, squirmed in my arms, their muffled protests that I was suffocating them a series of hot tickles upon my throat. Releasing them, I stepped back. Dot scowled. Candy, however, always the quicker to recover, grinned at me before she exclaimed, "I want to see Porcupine, Lily." When I laughed, the last trace of tension slipped from my shoulders. A snakeskin shrugged off, discarded. The new me, a different version from a moment ago, changed, slightly larger, and hopefully wiser. I didn't think I would be tested so soon, however, for at that moment, squeaking like their namesakes, the bat-wing doors that connected the bar area to a small kitchen swung wide, and a whistling Reinhardt Dahlman strutted into the lounge, disrupting our family reunion. Hair slicked back and shining like raven wings, a waxed handlebar mustache, twin-tail feathers below an alcoholic's booze red-nosed, Ronnie Dahlman was everything Hurricane Joe was not. I couldn't imagine what Mama saw in him. Tall and thin, yet with a spine angled like a warped piece of lumber. Ron wouldn't last a minute in the ring with bull-like Joe. Ron's beady bird-like eyes were trained on the twins, but then they flickered my way. Immediately his tune stilled, while the ever-present toothpick at the corner of his mouth snapped upward like a fisherman's rod tip at a sudden fish bite. Ron's grin. Oh, how I dreamed of punching those perfectly pearly white chompers. "Ah," Ron said, "there she is, Ms. Junior America. Lose anything lately?" In one hand, he carried a china plate. At its center, a halved cheeseburger awash in a sea of French fries, while in the other he held a ketchup bottle. With a still-like stroll, he walked to the twins, set down the plate and bottle in front of them. The twins immediately launched themselves at the fries and then winked at me. "Boy, sure I'm glad you showed when you did, kiddo." He flashed the grin again, the glint of a gold tooth catching fire from the reflected sunlight that slipped in through the bar's large windows that faced the lake. Down at the dock, a speedboat buzzed to life. At the sound, Ron glanced that way before latching back on me. "I'd hate for Cassandra to come in for her shift only to find her little pups hanging out without their big sis around watching them." Bending over, he retrieved a bottled beer from an unseen refrigerator, straightened, popped off the cap with the opener on the wall next to the bar, and took a long swig. Above the opener was a thermometer and barometric pressure gauge. Tavern legend said it came from the shipwrecked Edmund Fitzgerald, before it sank. Next to that was a thumbtacked Xeroxed playbill for an upcoming boxing bout down in Madison. My gaze locked onto a familiar name far down on the list of fighters, but then hurriedly looked away. Reaching between the tins, I snagged a French fry and ate it. I had to admit, Ron knew his way round a grill. The fry, crispy on the outside, pillowy warm on the inside, melted inside my mouth. By the time I finished it off, I was ready with my response. First, wiping off my fingers on my pullover, I shrugged. "I sent them ahead. You know, kids. They were hyper. I knew you'd look out for them until I got here." He nodded sagely, his bird eyes unwavering while he took another swallow of beer. It wasn't even noon yet, and he was already drinking. Not a surprise there. Not much else to do at the resort if a person didn't like to fish, swim, or water ski. And as manager, the beer was probably free. Most likely hair of the dog. And Mama had come in later than normal last night. The fact that she woke me with her entrance betrayed her drunkenness. My skin crawled under his continued stare. I crossed my arms. Thanks." He nodded. "Don't mention it. That's what friends do." Huh? Friends? He couldn't be serious. Mama might be friendly with Ron, but that in no way extended to her eldest daughter. Not cool. "You know," Ron said, "friends, pals, those people close to you who can trust to keep secrets safe." He twirled the end of his mustache. "Friends who help each other out in times of need. But it's got to be mutual, you see, in order for it to work. So it can last a good long time. Lifelong, even." I must have been shaking my head. "No. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's how the adult world works, kiddo. Look at your mother and me. We help each other out all the time." My stomach hurt again. I was hungry, but that wasn't it. Ron creeped me out. "Take a seat, Lily. I've got something important to ask you." He indicated the bar stool across from him. When I hesitated, he added, "Please." With reluctance, I sat. Besides me, the twins continued to noisily gobble down their lunch. Like pier posts, I jammed my elbows onto the bar. A second later, I leaned forward and rested my head in my hands. Then, tilting my face up at Ron and batting my eyelashes, I asked, "Yes, Reinhardt?" I had Ron's undivided attention, yet he seemed at a loss. His gaze kept darting over my head as if words might magically appear there. While I waited for him to find his tongue, the weekly emergency test sounded. Always an unexpected surprise, the siren's call started out as a growling dog awoken from his nap, but quickly built to a warbling banshee's wail. I'd always wondered what would happen if a tornado struck Loon Lake at exactly that time. Would people just assume it was a drill and continue about their business while the storm swept them into the sky? Ron had flinched at the alarm, but appeared to have gathered his wits. Mouth flapping away like a fish on dry land, I had a hard time making out his words. Your mother, good to me, my future. Predictions turned out real. Mama must have given Ron a complimentary reading, maybe more than one by the excitement that shined in his eyes. That also explained why he'd been at our trailer that morning. I changed my mind about the free divination. Mama was short on the rent this month. Perhaps she'd broken her rule and asked Ron to pay for her services. The siren continued its cry. Ron, meanwhile, to compensate, leaned over the bar so his lips were right next to my ear. I had no difficulty hearing his next words. Your mother is a wonderful person, Lily, and so are you and the twins. Special women, all four of yous, the whole kit and caboodle. His breath was a wet feather dipped in milk that had gone well past its expiration date. I didn't know whether to laugh or puke. When I pulled back from him, he grabbed my arm, not hard, but squeezing enough to keep me in place. See, it's this way. The bird's stare was in his eyes again, twin pinpricks of reflected sunlight, cold stars in a night sea. I like your mother a lot. It's like Cassandra has put a spell over me. I can't help myself. I want to be with her. I want her and me to be more than just friends. You understand? Oh, I understood. Mama didn't need Watermagic to work her charms. I'd seen men literally fall to their knees in her presence. Hurricane Joe hadn't been an exception. Of course, he'd repaid Mama back more than once. Ron's grip tightened until it started to hurt. Call me old-fashioned, a gentleman of sorts, but I wanted to talk to you first, get your permission and such before I ask. See if you think it's okay. I was laughing then, a dry, brittle crow's caw that hurt my throat almost as badly as Ron's continued hold on my arm. I tugged away from him, hopping off the bar stool at the same time. He didn't let go. Twisting my wrist and jerking upwards, he yanked me back toward the bar. Spittle sprayed from between his lips, the toothpick lost and forgotten. What's so funny, huh? The stool toppled to the floor before I collided into the bar edge with my gut. Air exited my lungs as if they were popped birthday balloons. The sudden change in Ron wasn't surprising. I'd witnessed Hurricane Joe go from quiet calm to gale force at the flip of a tarot card. What shocked me was Watermagic. I felt her as always within me, a bottomless source of power I'd barely begun to tap. What I didn't feel was the urge to use it against Ron, on purpose or otherwise. When I continued to laugh, now a voiceless mime's hiccups, Ron jerked again, and I slammed into the bar edge a second instance. This time, my ribs took the brunt of the blow. You think it's funny, do you? And still, Watermagic didn't respond. Why wasn't I angry? Yes, Ron was pathetic, but if I didn't want a cracked rib, I had to defend myself. At least I needed to get the twins away from this madman. At some point, the alarm stopped, and I hadn't noticed. Of course, right then, I was having a hard enough time trying to breathe. I couldn't see Candy or Dot, but I heard them whimpering nearby. I also heard Mama. Let her go! When Ron released me, I slipped to the floor. From my position, Mama, although dressed in her usual work outfit, cheap yet comfortable white sneakers, frayed waitress smock cleaned and pressed, auburn locks perfectly pulled back in a braid, was a fury, a goddess filled with anger, ready to dole out punishment for those who'd pissed her off. "Hey, Cassie!" Ron rushed round the bar. It's not like it looks, honestly." Gaze darting from Mama to me, he knelt and offered me a hand. When I slapped it away, he stood awkwardly and faced Mama. Simple misunderstanding. No permanent harm done." Before Ron could finish, Mama was upon him, a mother cougar protecting her young, claws out, fangs ready to rip out this interloper's throat. Ron raised his hands under her blows, and I expected the worst, or at least the usual. But Ron, unlike Hurricane Joe, didn't strike back. Instead, he accepted Mama's building abuse. His stilted frame shrank inch by inch with every blow. Mama's hands a lumberman's axe to Ron's towering tree. Worse yet, Ron's passivity only fed Mama's furor. Her fingernails left marks in his flesh. His arms, throat, and cheeks spraying ribbons of blood as if her touch was a dowager's rod finding hidden water. Her chest heaved from the energy expended, her eyes blind with rage. Ron didn't exist to her any longer. He'd been judged and found guilty of being a man. I scrambled backward to get as far from this madness as possible before it sucked me into its vortex. Then I spotted the twins, cowering on their bar stools, tears and snot dribbling from their faces. They appeared turned to stone by the scene before them. Struggling to my feet, I rushed to them, but when I touched them, their mutual paralysis broke. They fought against my efforts to take them away, miniaturized versions of Mama, hitting me with tiny fists, gnashing their teeth whenever I neared a face. "Stop it," I shushed. "Candy, Dot." They refused to listen, meowing for a mother cat who was lost in a battle of demons of her own creation. Suddenly, Todd was at my side. "Here, let me help." Seeing him, the twins leapt into his open arms, wrapping their hands round his neck, their legs across his middle, as if he was their protective older sibling and not me, all the while whimpering, "Toad, Mama, Toad." I squelched a moment's jealousy before I instructed, "Get them out of here." He obeyed. Walking with Candy and Dot latched onto him, he staggered toward the entrance like a drunk at closing time. Once they were safely out of sight, I turned back to Mama and Ron. Ron's face, neck, and arms were an atlas selection of roads and rivers colored red, while his nose dripped blood and his lower lip looked swollen. Strangely, his grinning mouth widened each time Mama hit him. Mama, meanwhile, appeared to tire. Her long braid had come undone, her hair a flooded, mud-filled stream that cascaded down her bent back in series of rapids. When her latest blow, an open-handed slap, landed on Ron's cheek, he barely registered its presence, his head turning in negation with the smallest of degrees. Bringing a hand to his nose, he dabbled at the blood. After examining the bloodied finger, he gazed back at Mama. The grin never left his face. "You're through." It wasn't a question. Mama, about to deliver another slap, came up short. Her shoulders sagged. "Yous," Ron glanced at me, "and your bastard spawn will vacate Loon Lake Lodge by sunset." At the restaurant entrance stood a family of 5 from the rental cabins, a 20-something husband and wife with 2 bathing-suited tots and a baby, their bodies silhouetted by the noon sun. More guests were gathered behind them, the day's lunchtime customers starved for their greasy burgers and fries, their voices muffled but unmistakable. "What's going on? Who's fighting? She did what?" Ron took in the interlopers before turning back to Mama. "If not, then I will be forced to notify the sheriff of your attack upon myself and have you physically removed for trespassing and assault." "No," Mama said. "Ron." "Ronnie?" Ron raised an eyebrow. "No." I inchwormed the few steps to Mama, touched her elbow. "Mama." She lashed out like a startled timber rattler, wheeling about, striking with the flat of her hand, her bout of fatigue obviously recovered from. My butt was back on the floor before I fully registered what had happened. The sting rising in my cheek, a freshly opened soda bottle fizz of pain that increased by the moment. The echo from the slap and the concussive force of it hit me a second later. The sound of thunder after a lightning strike. "Don't you mama me! This is all your fault! You just can't help it, can you?" Hand caressing my injured cheek, I shook my head while I shuffled away from her wrath. "Never should have had you," she spat. "Turned out just like her father. Nothing but a little whore. No good. Ruin of my life." With the restaurant a whirlpool and Mama at its vortex, I made my way to the hallway that led to the restrooms. Reaching it, I flipped onto my knees and crawled out from Mama's sight, finally knowing what my mother really thought of me.